Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is going to be traveling to Montana this coming weekend to campaign for Rob Quist, who's running in a special election to replace Ryan Zinke in the state of Montana. The election takes place May 25th.
Hey, Michael Tracy here. We are in Billings, Montana, where Rob Quist is seeking to become the next congressman from Montana, and tonight he is being aided in those efforts by none other than Bernie Sanders, who will be holding a rally here in a few minutes.
This is a state that has not elected a Democrat to the House for decades. It is a state that Donald Trump won by some 20 points. However, Republicans are deeply concerned about this seat, and for good reason. They put up kind of a cartoon plutocrat, this guy Greg Gianforte, who is a New Jersey kind of software entrepreneur who built a program that allows companies to more efficiently offshore jobs. He then built his kind of data center area out in Montana, so he's responsible for hiring hundreds of people in the state. He moved out there. He sold his company to, I believe, Oracle for like $1.5 billion, and he tried to buy the governor's mansion in 2016. He failed. So now, with this special election, he's running again. He's running against a bluegrass legend from the state. Rob Quist has been a well-known figure in Montana for close to 40 years now. He was it's kind of hilarious what a good kind of political resume he has, despite not being a politician. He was a high school basketball champion. Then he was a basketball star at the University of Montana. Then he was in the band Montana. He toured around with the Grateful Dead. In the early 1970s, for a benefit concert, he organized what the Guinness Book of World Records says is the largest keg party in world history. He took those organizing skills recently and kind of went around the entire state of Montana during the Democratic primary, and when he found a county that didn't have a Democratic party, he would find people there and say, hey, you guys, why don't you guys form a Democratic county party here, and then come to the convention. And so several new county parties were formed. Those people were then made delegates to the convention. They came to the convention, and they nominated Rob Quist, who during the 2016 primary had supported Bernie Sanders against Hillary. Bernie won the Montana primary. He's a supporter of single-payer health care. He supports legalizing marijuana, which he affirmed in a debate, which takes some courage. It's one thing as a musician to say you support legalizing weed. It's another thing to stand up in a campaign trail in a red state and say that you support it. So he hasn't backed down from a lot of his populist positions. And so Sanders is now going to be campaigning across the state with him on the 20th and 21st of May during early voting and leading up to the 25th of May. Now, what does the election really matter? There are 435 members of Congress. Does it really matter? Think about this. Obamacare was repealed by just 2 votes. And so if Democrats send another member from Montana, if they send somebody from Georgia, if they can steal a seat in South Carolina even, one, it requires Paul Ryan to twist the arms of some more vulnerable members of Congress and put them on record, further imperiling them in November, or he simply doesn't have the votes. The Senate is not going to pass the House health care bill word for word. So if they change one single word, that means it has to go to a conference committee, and then it has to come back through the House of Representatives. So the House is not done with this. So if you tip the balance of power by just a couple of digits, that matters. Separately, if in the wake of this health care vote, a state like Montana sends a Democrat to Congress, and particularly a Democrat who's calling for single-payer health care and running against the repeal of Obamacare, then it tells anybody, any member of Congress who is a Republican and won by 20 points or less, that they now need to worry about their own careers, and that further makes it more difficult for them to repeal Obamacare, imperil benefits for people who have pre-existing conditions, and on and on. And also gets Congress one vote closer to single payer. Finally, the national implications, I think, for Sanders himself and the movement around him are huge. He went out to Omaha. He endorsed the Omaha candidate there, Heath Mello. Mello lost by 7 points. That's not a terribly embarrassing loss. In the past, Democrats weren't even competitive in these mayoral elections, but it's still an L. And so Sanders doesn't want to take too many L's. So if he goes out to Montana and Rob Quist pulls off an upset when most national Democrats were ignoring him, then all of a sudden Bernie has major coattails, and people are going to be clamoring for him to campaign for them around the country. And in order to get him to campaign for them, they're going to have to kind of be on the platform that Sanders supports. So you're going to see a lot of Democrats then around the country saying, hey, I'm for single payer, I'm for the fight for 15, I'm for breaking up the banks. And if you see that, it shifts the party further in Sanders' direction. If Rob Quist loses out in Montana, then it says to people, well, maybe Sanders' power is fading a little bit. So this is one that is worth watching. Early voting has already started. The election is going to be May 25th, which is next Thursday.
I've had the great honor today of traveling with and talking to and getting to know one of my great heroes, and that's Bernie Sanders.
You know, when Rob began his campaign, a lot of people would say, well, you know, he's an interesting guy. He can play the guitar. He can sing. He's a poet. Wow, that's really cool. But he's not serious. He can't really win this election. Well, guess what? Just came back from Washington on Thursday. You have gotten the Republican leadership very, very nervous because they know that Rob's campaign has been a great campaign and that he is on the verge of pulling off a major, major upset. Now, I don't want to get you all very nervous, but the eyes of America, and actually the eyes of many people throughout the world, are looking right here at the great state of Montana and what's going to happen on Thursday.
So I'd just like to share a poem with you. John Tester has been campaigning for me, and he said, Rob, when you speak to Billings tonight, would you recite that poem that you wrote? And so I'd like to recite it for you now. Montana. She's been called a lady when we sing her praise. And if you fail to see the logic, well then, let me count the ways. Her cirrus hair is red and gold at evening sunset's light. And I've always thought her mountains looked especially good in white. Her gown is luscious green when she attends the annual springtime ball. And she fancies orange and gold at harvest moon in the fall. Her wild and natural beauty, it will take away your breath. Oh, but just take her for granted. It could easily mean your death. She's slow to grant her favors to come lately, newer faces. To longtime suitors, she reveals her hidden, secret places. She lives in big-time splendor. She's the heart of the Golden West, and all manner of wondrous creatures live and suckle at her breast. And yes, there will be those who come with schemes of ways to use her, to sell her body like a harlot, to cheapen and abuse her. If you've sworn your love for her, revere, respect her. If you're a man of honor, you must cherish and protect her. And should we fail in this task, we'll lose this living treasure. Should we prevail, this lady that we love will live forever.